Okay, welcome to the African Consciousness Truth Over Lies YouTube channel. I am your host, Nigel Nicholson. And in this video, I again going to talk about certain things that I really, that we as Black people really need to start talking about and really need to identify what is being done and to make a conscious effort and a conscious decision to move with an awareness that we are being attacked in ways in which we don't see. And we have to acknowledge this every single day. But first, we must come to an awakening. We must come to a conscious awakening. Okay? And I'm just talking about all of a sudden you're going to become so conscious and stuff. What I'm talking about is being able to get up in the morning and say to yourself, this system of white supremacy that we live under is continuing to attack us in ways we cannot see. Okay? We may know, right? But we cannot see it. All right? And what I'm talking about is cognitive warfare. Now, when you start to become more self-aware, when you start to educate yourself on issues, okay, that affects you as a Black person, your children, your community, then through researching and through identifying those attacks, you'll be able to see it. You'll be able to recognize it at firsthand. Okay. It will no longer bypass your conscious mind, but you're able to see it and make a conscious decision to fight back, to stop it if it's a destructive behavior within your subconscious mind that has been programmed into you. What I call, not what I call, but what is called menticide and cognitive warfare, cognitive attacks, psyops, okay, economic warfare, educational warfare, scientific warfare, environmental warfare, medical warfare, okay, in all aspects, in all areas of our lives, white supremacy has waged war on us. And I always say this, that when it comes to any sort of experimentations, they do it to the Black community first. They start with Black men first. And then they move on to Black women. So Black men and Black boys, and now they've moved on to Black women. And I'm going to explain this and I'm going to show you guys, okay, through the use of cognitive warfare. All right, so I'm going to pull up this, I'm going to bring up actually this, what is this? Okay. What you see here is an article called Cognitive Warfare. It says, although most of the cognitive attacks remain below the threshold of armed conflict, the effects can be lethal and multi-domain, affecting all five domains of warfare. Now, they call this new concepts. As usual, they like to gaslight the public, particularly when they come out with certain things as being new concepts. But I've shown you, all right, through research documents that these things are nothing new. Okay? Victory will be defined more in terms of capturing the psychocultural rather than the geographical high grounds. Understanding the empathy will be important weapons of war. This is Major General Robert H. Scales, retired PhD, former commandant at the U.S. Army War College. So let's talk about what is cognitive warfare. So in this article, again, this is also from NATO, right? So you see here by Commander Cornelius van der Kloor, Royal Netherlands Navy subject matters expert, strategic communication and information operation, NATO Joint Warfare Center. This article aimed to raise awareness of a new NATO concept that is in its infancy, but that will have a significant impact on individuals, groups, societies, and the way future wars are fought. Cognitive warfare. Now, again, when they say this, and when was this written? 2023. Now, you can go back as far as 2007, 2008, and you will find the cognitive warfare agenda was already in place. But because most people don't read these things, okay, we tend to not know what these things are, and so they can say, well, this is entirely new. Okay, we are almost 2 decades into this new terminology. Before, it was psychological operations. Now it is cognitive warfare. Okay, so I'm just going to read some of this, not all of it, because there's a lot of stuff I want to touch on today. Why it matters. Okay, cognitive warfare is a structure and a well-considered approach to target the human cognition of individuals, groups, and societies in a way that affect their decision-making processes and ultimately their behavior. While cognitive effects are not measured in the typical sense, they do affect how we think, what we feel, and how we act using brain-centered technology that aim to destabilize structures, create distress, and fracture and break social cohesion. Okay, I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay. Let me go back. Okay, this is a declassified document that was released in 2000. Okay, almost 2.5 decades ago. What is the name of this? Let's see if there is an official heading. There isn't. But let's understand this. This is, again, you see a country, Russia, subject, program examines psychological control experiment in USSR. This is an editorial report. Moscow, can't even pronounce some of this stuff. So some of the words I'm not going to pronounce. So I might just do the first letters of each name. So Moscow, TO television first program network in Russia at 1920 GMT on 17 September. Okay. And what is this? It says television first program network. Okay. Now, in its novelty newscast, broadcast a 40-minute program entitled Black Box, dealing with the device and drugs used in the former USSR to influence and bend the human brain. The program begins with the presenter noting that apparently a program for implementing method of psychological influence was submitted to then Prime Minister in 1987. There were plans to use psychological influence for military and economic purposes. The program goes on to deal with the method of influencing people's physical and mental condition and exerting influence on their decision. An unidentified man comment on the work which was carried out to implement this program. He says that a commission consisting of 20 people was set up. There were 6 academians among them and a scientific council led by an academian K. Anyhow, was also set up. Okay. Now I'm going to skip past these things because they talk about, again, certain weapons that are used to staring of intellect, right? Actually, let me read this. It says, Doctor of Technology Valerie Kenyuka, the first interviewee identified by caption, emphasis that one must be very careful with these programs until the world states reach some agreement, until an international legislation banning psychological and physical staring of intellect and influencing people. A memorandum on this groundwork is needed, he said. Instead of nuclear weapons, we will get a new form of weapon, a more frightening one which has a frightening name. It is called logically pure weapons. Okay? Can you then say that influencing the human brain and subsequently genetics could be extremely dangerous? Now, in the 1990s, what was the health department all across the U.S. were doing, particularly in Baltimore? Right? What were they doing? They were looking at the DNA of black children, okay, particularly black boys. At least that's what they said, to find some genetic marker, in which makes black boys us. I was a young man in the 90s, just coming out of my teens, looking for a genetic marker that makes us susceptible for violence. Yeah, but yet they never look at the young white boys who will grow up to be serial killers, mass murderers. They never seem to be concerned with those young white boys. Okay? I want you guys to think about that as you listen to what I'm saying, as you look at the information I'm going to give you. And again, I'm not going to talk about the genetic research, the technology that is used to manipulate us. On this video, I'm going to look at the social structures and the social, educational, and economic attacks on black people. But notice that these weapons play a big part in influencing us, particularly black women today, in having and steering their personalities. Okay? I'm going to read this part right here because, I read this almost a decade ago. And this made me realize that, that this was indeed true. Okay? This is an extract. It says, it would be tempting to turn psychological weapons, that's what he said, psychological weapons against one's own people and make millions of them forget about discontent with the system of social inequality, about the struggle for peace, and about their civil rights. Oppressed but joyful, fleeced by monopolies, but content with everything. Wouldn't this be the ideal citizens from the point of view of the ruling circles in countries of the West? Now I'm going to ask you this question. As a black person to black person, and as a black person to a white person, to a Hispanic person, to an Asian person, which group of people in America today exhibit what is just mentioned here? We know it's not white people because we see what happened on January 7th, right? The so-called insurrection. Okay. And we know as a society that if that was black people, what would have happened? Okay. Let's be honest with ourselves here. So Again, which group of people, right, exhibit the same conditioned behavior that this is talking about? Okay? Turning psychological weapons against one's own people. And when you say one's own people, meaning those living within the country, the border of a country, American citizens, black people, black Americans, right? Black immigrants. Make millions of them forget about discontent with the struggle of social inequality, about the struggle for peace, and about their civil rights, oppressed but joyful, fleeced by monopolies but content with everything. Now, which group of people exhibit this sort of behavior? Cognitive attacks. All right, written 2024. COVID-19 operation, psychological operation and the war. Talks about menticide, which I talk about a lot. Okay. Menticide attacks the cognitive faculties of victims to break down their mental integrity and render them susceptible to indoctrination. During COVID-19, confusion was weaponized in various ways, including a proliferation of nonsensical and ever-changing rules, last-minute U-turns on key government decisions, unpredictability of restriction, easing, or tightening, and a fundamental irrationality in government behavior. I'm just going to leave that right there. I want you guys to think about that. Go back to what you remember and what was taking place at the time. Okay? The misinformation, right? The set of rules that apply to one group of people, but not the other, right? For example, you know, here in New York, you had white people in the park sunbathing with no mask on, and yet you have black men, and particularly black men, walking in the street with no mask on, being accosted by the police, being sometimes even arrested. Okay? So I just want to open this video by just giving you guys this information so that you understand that it is beyond just education. It is beyond just the financial castration of black men in America. It is beyond just the environmental warfare and poisoning. What we have here today is a group of people, well, black people, conditioned using cognitive warfare, defeated using cognitive warfare. And so when I hear other black people say, why that they can't understand why black people behave the way they do, or even themselves, right? You need to understand why. And I'm just giving you a little bit of information, okay? Because it is more. And the reason why I'm doing this is because they have now began over the last decade, I say decade and a half, to directly engage in cognitive warfare against black women and black girls. Okay? I'm going to do a separate video on black men and black boys, but I'm going to include black male teachers here because I want you to understand how it's important, right? So particularly when they started separating, causing this gender divide between black men and black women, the outcome and how they achieve it, I'm going to share a little bit with you. Okay? So I want to start off by looking at how the amount of black children being raised in single parent home where the head of household are black women and the negative outcomes. Okay? See, regardless of what they want to tell you, regardless of the false narrative articles that you may read, okay, I want you guys to always go to credible sources that's going to give you the truth. And not just, don't just go to one, go to a lot, because sometimes within the credible sources, they will do things, right, in a visual way that they know will retain in your memory, in your mind, in your brain computer, than just reading it. Okay? So this is from the living arrangement of children by race ethnicity. Okay? So how do, I don't know what happened there. So how do living arrangement of children vary by race? Okay, this is from, again, the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquent Prevention. Living arrangement. How do the living arrangement of children vary by race? In 2023, the majority of white children and Hispanic children live in two parents' home, 76.3% and 67.4%, respectively. Compare with 44.6% of black children. And you can see here, all right, two parents, white, that's the dark blue. Okay, so they're at the top. Most white children live in two parents' home. Most Hispanic children live in two parent home. Black children are the least to live in two parent home. Percentage of children living with their mother by race ethnicity. The purple, mother only white. The orange, mother only black. The green, mother only Hispanic. And you can see again here where you have black children living with their mothers only. Okay. Person of Hispanic ethnicity can be of any race. However, most are white. Race proportion includes persons of Hispanic ethnicity. Now, why do they say most are white? Why do they say person of Hispanic ethnicity can be any race? However, most are white? Because it's the U.S. government policy to identify Hispanics as white. Okay. And particularly if Hispanic people take a DNA test, they will see that a large number of their group have African ancestry, particularly if they know the history of what happened in South America during colonization. Okay. The current population survey methodology changed to more accurate reflect children's co-residence with their parents. This change is reflected in the estimate beginning in 2007, where two parents' home include all homes in which a child lives with both parents, married or unmarried, biological, step, or adoptive. Nearly half, 49.7% of all black children live with one parent in 2023. Compare with about 1 in 5, okay, 20.2% of white children. Between 1980 and 1923, the proportion of children living in two-parent families declined for white youth. So notice that there is a decline, right? But they still have the majority in terms of two-parent household. Okay? So the decline from 82.7 to 76.3. And Hispanic youth, 75.4 to 67.4. For black youth, the proportion of children living in two-parent families in 2023 44.6 was above the level in 1980. So, what does that tell you? That even though there has been a decline in white and Hispanic household in terms of children, the decline in two-parent household, they're still in the majority. Okay, and where you had in the 1980s, 42.2% of black children, which is still high, okay, who were living in two parents household. What we see here is more black children today are living in mothers only household. So though the numbers may be in terms of when you look at the overall population, how they switch it backwards. So what that should have been, okay, that's 42.8%. I mean, that 42.2%, that should be 58.8. Right? I hope I'm right. I hope my math is right. Let's see here. But so they flip the number. They don't give you the higher number and then say, okay, there has been an increase or a decrease. What they do is to give you to say that, well, there's an increase. Well, we know there's an increase, but I want you to understand how they play with those numbers, right? So why not? Let's say why not say 60% of from the 1980s? There were 60% of black children, or not 60%, 52% of black children were living with both parents. But that number has increased, not decreased. All right? I hope I'm saying that right. I hope I'm getting my numbers back on track here. Okay? But this is what they do. That number game causes you a little bit of confusion. Between 1970 and 2023, the proportion of children living with their mothers in single parents household increased from 7.8 to 16.1 for white youths, and from 29.9 to 44.2 for black youths. For children of Hispanic ethnicity, the proportion living with their mother in single parents household increased from 19.6 in 1980 to 24.5 in 2023. Okay, and this is the information here. So, the vast majority of black children, or I should say the majority of black children, are living in single parent home with the head of household or the mothers. Okay, now why is that important? Why is that important? Well, when it comes to education, it is very important. All right? Black children living with single household run and where the mother's the head of household, they are diagnosed with more behavioral issues. Black mothers are more likely to allow school social workers to diagnose or to recommend diagnosis of black children for having ADHD, as Dr. Umar Johnson talked about. You see, once they're able to take the black male out the house, now they move in to engage in psychiatric warfare. Okay? Because they know with no male in the house, the mother's working, children's left by themselves, they're going to suffer from behavioral issue. They're going to lack the respect of male authority. They are going to engage in certain types of behavior in which they shouldn't engage in, but because they have no adult supervision, right? And they're being raised by television, right? In today's age is television and social media platform. They're more easily influenced now than ever before. Okay, and particularly when you have a parent who is either too tired from work, who may be suffering from depression because of her circumstance, who may be very religious and don't want to engage in any talk of the things that a parent would need to talk to their children about, like sex, right? Like doing schoolwork. Okay. And so what we have here is a series of issues that will arrive out of their home. And now when these children attend school, they have behavioral issues. On top of that, within the past 3 decades, the U.S. Department of Education has engaged in educational warfare, basically removing black male teachers out of the school system, out of principalships, right? And now you have the majority of teachers and principals in the U.S. school system. They're either white male, white female, and black female. Okay, and again, I'm not just saying this; it's the truth. All right, go look it up. According to the latest government education data, black students make up 50% of students' enrollment. They represent double the number of all in-school suspension at 31%. White students were 47% of total public school enrollment and represents 39% of all suspension. And you can see here in this chart, out of school suspension in 2017, right? Enrollment, white, non-Hispanic. In the pink, in the blue, out of school suspension. So they have more enrollment, right? And less out of school suspension. Whereas black children, okay, make up 15.1% of enrollment, but are suspended at over about 2.5 times the rate of enrollment. All right, there you have American Indian, Native Alaskan, 1% of enrollment, and 1.4% of out of school suspension. Hispanic Latinos at 27.2% enrollment and 21.7% suspension. So they have more enrollment than they have out of school suspension, just as white. And you have Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, and they're about equal. Student with disabilities, right, where you have 15.9% enrollment, and you have almost double the rate of out of school suspension. So the two groups that have a lower enrollment, but almost 2 times the out of school suspension are black students and students with disability. Right? And particularly, I live in New York City, where New York City is the most racist, one of the most racist state. Also, yes, New York City is one of the most racist state, and also the most segregated school system in the nation. Right? See, when we talk about segregation and racism, we have places like Alabama, Georgia, right? Places in the South, in the Midwest, or Texas, right? But this is something that we as black people who live in the North or live in big cities tend to not even think about, not even acknowledge. You look at Chicago public school system, another segregated school system and racist school system. So when they are engaging in the divide and conquer strategy against black men and black women, and for black men over the past decade or so, I think we've come into a more of a awakening, right? In the 1980s and 1990s, cognitive warfare was concentrated amongst black men and black boys. In the 2010s into the teens, well, up until today, that has flipped. So now the most concentrated attacks on cognitive warfare is black women and black girls. Okay? And because of, again, you have most black children who are being raised in single household run by black women, we see that black children, okay, are the most in the country that can't read or do math. All right, this is from The Hill. Many of America's black youth cannot read or do math, and that imperils us. There's something deeply troubling happening in this country. I thought I had a gasp on it, but I was gravely off base. I hosted the Republican candidate for Virginia Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears on my TV show, Your Voice, Your Future, on November 1st. I plan to ask her and the other guests question on issue ranging from the November election to inflation to the current presidential administration. However, in Ms. Sears' first response, the entire course of the show changed. In my first question, I asked her what is wrong in Virginia and how it can be fixed. Her response startled me. She told me that 84% of black students in 8th grade lack the ability to do math, and 85% are functionally illiterate. I could not believe this. In fact, I thought she had misspoken. My researchers quickly fact-checked her word and confirmed this sad reality. According to the National Assessment of Educational Progress, the NAEP, a sector of the U.S. Department of Education, 84% of black students lack proficiency in mathematics, and 85% of black students lack proficiency in reading skill. This astonished me. And the hour-long show became dedicated to examining what's behind these numbers. While I left the studio perplexed, how could this happen in schools located so close to the nation capital? I have reported extensively on the educational plight of Baltimore, but I thought this issue would be unique to that city. Was this happening nationwide? I had to get to the bottom of this. So the things that in our community we ignore, okay? They'll say, well, the fathers are not in the home. Well, why are the fathers not in the home? Right? Because we know even though the fathers are not in the home, black men are the most when it comes to interacting with their children, when it comes to visiting their children, comes to, doing the things that fathers do for kids, for their children, we're at the top. Okay? But why are the majority of black children failing school? It is important that we understand and recognize that without fathers in the home, biological fathers, okay, that even though a father is active in a child's life or their children's life, right, those children still resides in the home of the mother, and they have the majority of the time is spent with the mother, and the mothers are either too busy working, and on the weekend going out because they have to have a dating life, right? So the children within the home lack a stable environment, right, with two parents that can tend to their not only their educational needs, but their mental health needs, their recreational needs, right? Like watching a movie together, eating dinner together, playing games together. Those things add to the well being of children. And when children lack those things, okay, it affects them greatly. Now, you have some, Negropeans and, particularly women, they'll push back and they say, well, look at LeBron James' mother, or look at, at the time was Ray Allen. So they'll always bring up the exception to the rule, right? And that has been their talking point that they've been conditioned to. And it's the broader society that is feeding them these things. Then they'll have these articles that celebrate being a single mother. But they only do that with black women. You don't see articles on celebrating single white mothers. You don't see articles after articles celebrating single Hispanic mothers. You don't see articles after articles, praising single women of Arab descent, right? You don't see those things, or Asian. You don't see any articles about single Indian women, single parent who are Indian or Chinese or Japanese. You don't see that because those cultures don't praise single mothers for being single mothers. They prioritize marriage. They prioritize family, traditional family, mother, father, and child or children. But in the black community, black women, particularly older ones, are conditioning their children also to follow their same footsteps. And we have to understand why. And so it's the reason why I brought up cognitive warfare. Okay? Because it is very important that we understand this. Still, I left the studio, or I think I just read that. My team and I scourged the NAEP dataset and found a trend that should concern every politician, indeed, every American. Now, why are they not talking about this in the news media? I can guarantee you that if there was an epidemic of white women being single parent, it will be all over the news. I can guarantee you that, it will be all over social media and the news. Okay? In California, 90% of students cannot do well or read well, cannot do math or read well. In New York, the numbers are 85% and 82%. In Illinois, it is 86% and 85%. In Texas, the numbers are 84% and 89%. Maryland sits at 86% for math and 80% for reading. My home state of South Carolina is 90% and 87%. In Georgia, the numbers are 86% and 82%. In Missouri, it is 89% and 88%. And in Washington, D.C., those numbers are 85% and 87%. That's just a sampling. But the problem isn't confined to these states. Nationwide, black children overwhelmingly lack proficiency in math and reading. To use Ms. Sears' words, they are functionally illiterate, meaning that they are unable to manage daily living and employment tasks. How can our society progress if a major segment of our country cannot read? Well, they're showing us through the immigration policy, as predicted by Dr. Claude Anderson, that black people will be replaced, right? And that black people will be a permanent underclass. So when you miseducate children, when you create divide between black men and black women, when you have the vast majority of black children living in single household run by mothers, that number is only going to increase and our situation is going to get worse. Generations of black children will be left in a state of perpetual poverty. Not only perpetual poverty, but cognitively deficient. Okay? Arguably, our math skills are what will bog us down more in the coming years. The world has shifted towards the digital field. Practically all aspects of technology and programming are rooted in mathematics. This should worry lawmakers because the U.S. is failing behind internationally in math skills. Currently, the U.S. ranked 38th in math skills globally. China, which already surpassed U.S. economical and technologically, unsurprisingly, ranked number 1. Even Vietnam ranks number 14 spots better than we do at number 24. What is going on in this country? And again, I'm not even going to read the rest of this because, you have, even I'm reading this article, because I want to give you guys the statistics, right? The numbers, because we are not, as a people, acting as if this is an emergency. And clearly it is. Right? But I'm showing you guys how they have done this over the years, over the decades, removing the black man from the home, causing gender divide, first by manipulating black men, economically castrating black men, financially ruining black men. Okay? Within the schools, again, no men in the home, no fathers in the home. Children lack discipline, structure. A sense of, not a sense of, but they lack good study habits. They lack good grammar, spelling, reading, writing. And when you have 86% of black women in America who call themselves Christians, as they say, they're highly religious and they believe in their religion, and that is more important to them than getting their children into certain fields, the STEM field, technological field, medicine, right? Because they fear that when their kids or children go into college and take up those fields, that is going to pull them away from their religious belief. So knowledge within the home, right, is something that has been used and weaponized in a way in which that knowledge is not promoted, only belief. And so what that does is you leave the door open for the white supremacists to condition the minds of our children, and particularly black women and black mothers and black girls. Okay? So, the war on the male teachers. When I went to elementary school and junior high school, as well as high school, when I got into high school, there were a few black male teachers, but there were more black female teachers. But in junior high school, there were quite a few black male teachers. Right? But black male teachers have been systematically removed from education services, from the schools. All right. And studies have shown the importance, particularly amongst black boys, how important it is for them to see a black male teacher in the classroom. So all of the things that black boys need when to grow up into healthy men, into men that are going to thrive, men that are going to seek out education. So they remove the men in the home and they remove the men in the school system. Okay? Black male educators, it says creating schools where black male teachers can thrive. black male educators woefully underrepresented in U.S. classroom, said mentorship and a sense of community help ensure they stay in the profession. All right, now I want you to pay attention to the statistic. I'll just read, and then you guys are going to see what I'm talking about. Rachel Tueller Fortune remembers the difficult transition of leaving her neighborhood elementary school to go into a magnet middle school for gifted and high achieving students. Her algebra teacher, Mr. Smith, helped her settle in at a school and even became a source of inspiration. He would be Fortune's first and only black male teacher. Mr. Smith created a bit of a safe haven for me, really sought to encourage me to stay focused and to really maximize my potential and let me know that I was seen in that environment. Fortune, Jacksonville 08, said, it was very easy for young people to get lost when they're kind of thrust into an environment where they are now more affluent peers, kids who are also very academically bright, but who have more resources than you. Fortune's experience is all too rare. Black teachers make up just 7% of public school faculty, and black men make up only 2% of the U.S. public school teaching force, and they have a high turnover rate. That's true even though more than half of U.S. public school students are people of color. Now, what did I say about the single digits? In the profession in which a people need to progress, to become self-sufficient, to survive, right? You need at least 30% of the population to be in certain fields: technology field, medicine, education, psychiatry, right? Food, healthcare, all the things that people would need in order to thrive. And so what the white supremacist in America has done is to systematically keep black people, in the STEM field, educational field, psychiatry, all the stuff, in the single digits. Don't take my word for it. Go and look it up. The representation of black men matters in classroom. Black men spend more time mentoring and counseling students than teachers of any other demographics. Okay, say what? Hold up. Black men spend more time mentoring and counseling students than teachers of any other demographics. For black boys from low-income housing, exposure to a black teacher for 1 year in elementary school reduces high school dropout rates by 39%. Fortune is now working to make sure most students have experience like she did with Mr. Smith. She is the president of the Jacksonville Public Educational Fund, a think tank that works to close the opportunity gap for low-income students and students of color in Florida Duval County Public School. As part of the work, the organization is working to create a teacher pipeline for Black and Latinx men in the district. The fund is one of several organizations working to diversify the teacher workforce. Teach for America works to support Black educators by working with historically Black colleges and universities for recruitment and retention through the Black Educators Promise Initiative. TFA also budget $100,000 each year for incoming Black Corps member across 10 regions to help with certification support and other costs, including college debt that prevent people from getting their transcript. This school year, 24% of TFA Corps members are Black and 5% are Black men. So again, low numbers. Okay? Low numbers and low pay. Right? So now, with low pay, how are those men supposed to have a family, raise a family on that salary? It is easier for women to become teachers because women have so many resources available from the state and the federal government to aid and assist them. But black men and men in general, period, don't have that. Okay, so I would advise you guys to go and read this article. Now, another thing that I want to talk about is the this teacher in the Chicago public school system. Okay, Principal Abdul Muhammad. And I want you to understand how we as black people are our own worst enemy, particularly the Negropeans, Christians, that they will remove a principal who have literally transformed the school, have made the students better, and they removed them because of his religious belief. All right. Now, these are the same people who will talk about Christians being persecuted. Okay. And it goes to show you how religion is the great divider, despite what they say. Religion is the great divider. Okay. So they would rather place a Christian principal in there who continue to fail the students as to have a Muslim principal, and though he never tried to recruit any students into being into his religion, the fact that he's Muslim and a successful principal that is enough for jealousy and envy. Some of the things that they claim that Christians shouldn't be. Right? That's exactly who they are and what they do. Supporters of fired Lindblom principal demand CPS law department investigation. And I remember following this. This brother is, an upstanding gentleman, right? Who, again, here you have a black man who is showing you the importance of black men in the education system. And you have Negropeans siding with the colonizers, the racist whites, to remove him. As if they have more in common, right, with a racist white society than they do to a brother or sister that are of a different religious belief or no religious belief at all. Okay? So what does that tell you? What does that say? It's been almost a year since Lindblom Math and Science Academy principal Abdul Muhammad was wrongfully fired. Tori LaRiviere, president of the Chicago Principal and Administrator Association, calls for state, federal, and city investigation into the unjust removal of black principals from their position without due cause by CPS officials. Now it says here, black, so he's not the only one. Okay? The removals of black principals, again, I want you to understand the agenda. All right, when you have the majority of teachers within the school and principalship within the educational system, white men, white women, and black women, but you still see, even in schools where the principals are black women, you still see a higher rate of black children, particularly black boys, are being given out of school suspension. Using black women to do the job of the white supremacists. Why? Because black women are easily influenced, easily manipulated, and because they are women. We're dealing with a government who have experts in all areas, in all fields, including psychiatry, manipulation, and they know exactly what it is that they're doing. And we as black men, we need to educate ourselves and educate ourselves and each other properly. Okay. In order to combat what's going on, because not only is this going to affect future black boys who will grow up to be black men, but it will affect our girls who will grow up to be black women because they will not have enough suitable black men to marry, to have family with. And what they're doing is just pushing us apart. And our women fail to see what's going on. Okay. And again, I don't fault them totally. Right. But there have to be a sense of consciousness of what is going on. Muhammad, a highly respected principal with 25 years of experience, is known for his proven academic track record. He has been acclaimed for creating a pathway to excellence with his students. Muhammad compared his academic success to that of CPS pathway to failure and jail of his black students. So here's a black man, principal, who is taking away the black students, particularly black male students, from the prison from the school to prison pipeline. And they did not want that. The school system, in terms of what they're doing to the black family, is a tactic in which to create highly dysfunctional young black boys who will grow up to be highly dysfunctional young black men, right? And more likely have a run-in with the law enforcement, and because of the behavioral issues, because of no respect for male authority, will end up being in prison. These things have a direct effect. And again, this is just one aspect. I'm not even talking about the lead poison, the environmental warfare in which they do to black people, black children in particular, right? Where we know year after year, black children suffer the highest numbers in terms of lead poisoning, and yet somehow there isn't any national attention being brought to this. There isn't any national cleanup action being brought to this also, right? This is something that we ourselves as black men and black women don't even think about. And as you know, one thing about me, I'm going to tell you guys the truth. I'm going to show you, not just speak on it, but I'm going to show you to bring some level of consciousness back. Right? And again, I understand. When I talk about cognitive warfare, that alone let me know what an uphill battle we have, those of us who are conscious of these things, to try to teach our people these things. Okay? We don't have the expertise. When 4% of all psychiatrists in America are black, they're taking away the people, right, with the tools in our community who can help identify and fight back against these things, particularly with psychological warfare, cognitive warfare. Again, this is their strategy. Keep us in the single digits. Okay? So from 2000 to 2023, Lindblom was without a principal. Students have begun to fight. They were unsanitary conditions in restroom. Tell me about it. My teacher, my daughter, when I go pick her from school sometimes, she'll tell me, oh, a student, took a dunk on the floor, or the bathrooms are not working. All right. And she goes to PS6. And I'm just like, why is it that our children are going to school in which the bathrooms are not working? There's unsanitary condition. The bathroom should be checked every hour. Okay? But when I look at the custodian in her school, they're white. There's no black custodian there. Okay? So you're sending your children to school. They're not really being educated. They're being indoctrinated. And on top of that, they have to go into the bathroom where the bathroom is not working. Students are peeing all over the floor. And why is that? because of, again, the lack of training at home also. So I'm not just going to blame the school system, but I blame us as parents as well. Okay? We have to start to become more concerned with our children, with their education, right? With creating a positive and safe environment for them. And even if you're not living together with your child's father, your child's mother, right? You need to play an active part. Now, that doesn't mean that it will help improve their test scores, right? Because if you're not in the house making sure they do their homework during the week, they're not going to do it, because most mothers can really I don't want to say care less, but because of how they're conditioned not to think about those things. All right. So, where was I? So there were unsanitary conditions in restroom, high teacher absenteeism, and lower performance on standardized tests. Despite organized attempts to reject Muhammad as the new principal by white teachers, one of whom mentioned his faith as a Muslim, he prevailed. Student scores improved, and he even walked students to the bus stop to prevent any fighting. Still, Muhammad was Mr. Muhammad was, I'm going to give him his respect, right? Still, Mr. Muhammad was removed from Lindblom on March 31st, 2023, and was not given a reason for his firing. It took Mr. Muhammad's lawyer, attorney Syed Alim Muhammad, to force CPS to reveal their rationale. At that time, attorney Mr. Muhammad called CPS 82 charges pretty trifling and meaningless. Attorney Mr. Muhammad graduated from Bloomberg in 1992. His father taught chemistry there for 38 years. Muhammad said, "We need an oversight committee. Nobody should have their career taken on the basis of false charges. Nobody should have their name dragged through the media, and you can't even prove what you're saying. That is not fair." Mr. Muhammad's problem begins when he conducted an audit and found that Kelly Tarrant, the then athletic director, was allegedly depositing school funds into her personal bank account. Okay? According to attorney Mr. Muhammad, Tarrant was never charged with theft of the funds and is now chief investigator of the law department. Promote your criminals. This is what they do. Right? They all hide under the Christian banner. And like I said, they do it because they can always get on their knees and ask for forgiveness because Jesus died for their sins. All right? And so whatever sin they're going to commit, they know that their sin is forgiven. This is the mindset. The allegation leveled against Muhammad was made by a handful of white teachers and a black member of the black member of the Office of Local School Council Relations. They waged a smear campaign against Mr. Muhammad, a former two-time Golden Apple Award nominee and 2003 Teacher of the Year, and railroaded him out of office, says Levitt Veer. Okay? This is what they do. The attack on black male is multifaceted, and the removal of black male teachers within the school have a severe detrimental impact on black children, particularly black children who live in household where the head of household is the mother with no father in the home. So going to school and see a black male figure helps to promote self-esteem. So when you take that away, right, along with the fathers in the home, what we have today is the result of that. Right? Another example of cognitive warfare. Okay? So how do you, when you say, oh, well, how's that cognitive warfare? Do I need to read it again? Cognitive warfare is constructed and well considered approach to target the human cognition of individuals, groups of society in a way that affects their decision making processes and ultimately their behavior. Okay? All right. Now, here in New York, you know, the Nigerians here, Nigerians Christians, they love to walk around as if, you know, New York is not a racist state. Again, but again, that is cognitive warfare. The attack on black people for decades, multifaceted. And so I want you to get used to the term cognitive warfare and also neurocognitive warfare and read up about it. Any information that you find on it, read it. Talk to your friends, your family members about it. Talk to your children about it. Right? Because the only way to help yourself and each other, right, from being even more greatly impacted negatively by this is to become aware of it. Like I said, we have to have some level of consciousness. When I get up every morning, I make a conscious decision to do certain things. I make a conscious decision that when I post things on Facebook, that I post positive things, that I post pictures of black family, of black women wearing their natural hair, of black children. Right? I make a conscious decision to post about black history, true black history. Right? I wage a multifaceted campaign against disinformation on black people, the lies, the manipulation. I post information that will allow those that read my posts to become aware of these things. And that is a conscious decision that I make when I get up every day. When I leave the house, I get up, I go on the bus. I make it a conscious decision when I get off the bus that I tell the bus drivers, thank you and have a good day. Thank you, have a good night. Thank you, I appreciate you. Right? These are things that we need to do. Anti-segregation case against New York City Public School Claire Key Huddle. First in the nation case asserting a right to an anti-racist education to continue. New York City, May 3rd, 2024, a first of its kind lawsuit asserting a right to an anti-racist education under the New York State Constitution filed against New York State and City will move forward under a ruling by a state appellate court. In the lawsuit, integrated NYC students and community groups represented by Public Counsel and the Peer Defense Project challenge policies that entrench segregation and drive racial inequality in New York City public school system. See, they call New York City the melting pot, right? It's the melting pot in terms of the public sphere. When it comes to institutions, education, financial, corporate, New York City and state is the most segregated in those fields or those areas. All right. So again, they always talk about inclusion. But inclusion doesn't go in the educational system in terms of what is being taught, who is making the decision on what to teach. Inclusion is not in the boardrooms. Inclusion is not in the fire department. Inclusion is not in the higher ups of the New York Predator Department. Inclusion is not in the financial system, the banks. All right? But they talk about diversity. The only diversity they want is, okay, you can go into a restaurant and eat, sit down with white people and others. You can live on the same block with white people, even though white people are displacing black people at an alarming rate in communities where black people were the majority. Right? But we tend to look past those things. Right? Because we always want to believe that Jesus and God is going to save the day. But when I look at the amount of people that move out of the neighborhood because they can no longer afford the rent, it shows me. It doesn't tell me. It shows me that your God and Jesus ain't doing shit. And there's no power in the name of Jesus. Now you can call it blasphemy or what. But I look at the reality, not the delusion. Okay? I don't have a delusional way of thinking. All right? My purpose is to make the invisible visible. And this is why I do this. I don't have to do it. But I have a strong conviction in order to make things better for the next generation and to bring a level of consciousness in our minds. We have been pitted against each other. All right. And like I said, religion is the great divider. So if you're looking for the devil, look within your religion. Because that's the only place the devil is at. Okay? Other than the people that rule over us, right? They're the devils in the flesh. And it's not just a devil. They're devils with an S. This historic decision marks the beginning of the end of New York City two-tier educational system, says Mark Rosenblum, a public counsel attorney on the case. I hope the city and state will say enough is enough, and the system that screens Black and Latinx students out of elite public schools will finally be eliminated. It is an open secret that the city maintains and the state sanction. The racialized tracking system that locks most students of color out of the city's best classroom, says Amanda Mangiser Savage, a public counsel attorney on the case. This is a question of rights, not policy. Conditioning access to educational opportunity on wealth and race is illegal. Remember, we talk about this is New York City here. Okay? This is not Alabama. Right? This is not the South. New York City schools are among the most segregated in the nation. Beyond the discriminatory admission system, the lawsuit also challenges the lack of cultural responsive curriculum, racially desperate disciplinary practices, which I talked about, right? And the failure to build a diverse educator workforce. Again, the removal of Black male teachers and Black male principal. And so for those who think that these things are not important because we're too busy in the churches, praying it up, right? The war on Black men and Black women, the separation, the divisiveness, right? The way you see how this generation of young people, young Black people, are behaving because of social media, and particularly Black women because of social media. The majority of women that you see on social media twerking in their underwear, half naked, or just, stepping out of cars while cars is moving, twerking like it's something funny, are Black women. The vast majority. Now, some may say, I see white women do it too, Hispanic women. Okay, Asian women. Well, what are they wearing? Are they in their underwear? Are they lifting up their skirts, twerking? Right? Are they going to Africa in the place of no return where our enslaved ancestors were held, twerking? And talking about it's empowering? Again, cognitive warfare. Okay. Now, here's what we need to understand also. Less poverty, less prison, more college. What two parents mean for Black and white children. This is from the Institute of Family Studies. Again, this is one of the most research sites on the study of family, on the family structure. Okay. And again, the truth is undeniable. Okay. So, family structure and black children. Today's 37% of black children are living in a home headed by their own two biological parents. 48% are living in a home headed by a single parent, and 4% are living in a step family with one biological parent and one non biological parent. According to a March 2020 Current Population Survey, CPS, in this research brief, we explore how these three family structures are associated with child poverty, college graduation, and incarceration. We draw on data from the American Community Survey, ACS, 2015-2019 5-year estimates, and the National Longitudinal Survey of Youth, 1997 cohort, specifically the NLSY 97, follows the lives of a national representative sample of African American youths born between 1980 and 1984, and survey started in 1997 when the youths were ages 12 to 17. We use the wave that was surveyed in 2013, 2014, when the cohort was at least 28 years old. Okay? So in this chart, you see child poverty rates by child's race and family living arrangement. In the yellow, you see living with two parents in first marriage. In the gray, living in likely step parents' family. And in the blue, living with single parents. Okay? Again, this is the poverty rate. When children are living with two parents, okay, biological parents who are married, right, those child poverty rates is at 13%. When they're living with a step parent, right, where one is biological and one is a step parent, is 33%. When living with a single parent, poverty rate is 46%. Now let's contrast this with whites. So white children living with two parents who are married, the poverty rate is 5%. White children living with one biological parent and one step parent is 13%. So the 13% matches the 13% of black children living with biological parents who are married. Okay? And for white children living with single parents at 33%, which again matches the living with two black black children living with a biological parent and a step parent. Okay, but yet you will see a bunch of articles, right, promoting single black parent, particularly black mothers, despite the overwhelming evidence that shows you that black children are at a great disadvantage. But not only black children, but black mothers are at a great disadvantage also. Okay? Now, I'm not even going to go, this is the, college and prison. You guys can read this. Please do. All right? Now, I talk about black women. Okay? It's important that black women understand this. Okay? And how mental illness, right, or at least the increase in mental illness that's being diagnosed in black women is of a direct result of being a single parent or being the head of household where you're the only parent in the home. Okay. So not only do you have to deal with the weight of racism, discrimination, violence, and poverty, right? But also what comes along with it is you being a single mother taking care of children by yourself in the home. This is something that they don't want you to know and they don't want you talking about. And whereas if again, the vast majority of black men and black women, right, who have kids, if they put their differences aside and seek counseling, okay, they can turn around the negative results that will happen to their children and to each other. But there have to be some level of understanding, some level of respect, courtesy, care, concern, not only for themselves, but for their children. And that should be the most important thing above your so-called happiness, because we know that you're not really happy. All right. We know the vast majority of single black women who is the head of household and raising kids are not in committed relationships, but they are in situationships. Okay. Because they have been conditioned into this mindset of, I want to have fun. I want to have my sexual fantasies fulfilled. Okay. And I don't want anybody telling me what I can and can't do. I don't want to be held accountable. Okay. And that is a huge problem. And again, I understand. Right. So, let's see here. I think I want to read this one. Okay. I want you to listen to this. This is from the National Institute of Health. Okay. Because black single mothers is at a high risk for having serious depression later on in life, or even in their current status, particularly when they have more than one children and they're taking care of more than one children in the home by themselves. All right. Depression is a serious mental illness that negatively impacts physical health, quality of life, and psychosocial functioning, causing disability and death for some sufferers while increasing morbidity and mortality for others. Black single mothers are a minority population vulnerable to depressive symptoms. Studies have shown that up to 70% of black single mothers report depressive symptoms consistent with a diagnosis of mild to moderate clinical depression, 9 times the rate of depression in the U.S. general population. Now, they say mild to moderate. You have to take into consideration that the majority of people doing these diagnoses are white, and they tend to underrepresent the seriousness of black people, particularly black men and black women, when it comes to diagnosing them with mental illness. Unless it's black men who are fighting against the system, then you'll see they're being diagnosed with mental illness like schizophrenia. Okay? Just as when you go to the doctor, black women are 2 to 4 times likely to die in the delivery room than other groups of women. Why? Because doctors tend to, particularly white doctors, tend to ignore their complaint about pain. All right. So a recent study that tests a theoretical model of depression in black single mothers have shed light on antecedent variables that explain depression in this population. Although research suggests that depression has negative psychological and physical health consequences for multiracial samples of single mother and their children. Again, we know that's not true. It is more concentrated with black women. Okay. So when they talk about multiracial samples, what have you, we know that black people, when it comes to anything, whether it be our health, we suffer more. Our mental health, we suffer more. In terms of poverty, you know, I can go on. Okay. So again, when you understand certain aspect of certain things, even though you are reading this, remember too, because the government will also try to tone down things that happen negatively to black people. This is why it's important that you go to multiple sources. Okay. So a few studies have examined specific health and psychosocial outcomes of depression in black single mothers. The purpose of the study was to estimate paths in which just identify theoretical model of outcome of depression for black single mothers based on theoretical propositions and empirical finding. The result of this analysis will provide information that will aid practitioners to improve health practice and perception of social support for black single mothers. Now, what I just read about them doing this analysis, but then when you look at again the amount of black people, right, who are psychiatrists and psychologists, is only 4% of all psychiatrists and psychologists in the United States. Right? So when you understand that and you read that, what kind of support do you think black single mothers who are suffering from depression are going to get? Right? And who is going to benefit from black women who have depression? Who are going to benefit from them going to see a therapist or seek treatment? White people. White men and women who are psychologists or therapists or psychiatrists. Okay? So again, when you have to have the knowledge to understand these things. And so we need to, again, become more consciously aware. As Neely Fuller said, if you don't understand white supremacy, what you think you understand about white supremacy, okay, and again, let me repeat that. If you don't understand white supremacy in its totality, everything you thought you knew about white supremacy will only sought to confuse you. Okay? The theoretical model of outcome of depression. Theorists have proposed a relationship between depressive cognition and depressive symptomology. Depressive cognition is defined as specific maladaptive cognitive distortion that precede the development of depressive illness or clinical depression. These cognition include feeling of powerlessness, helplessness, purposelessness, worthlessness, loneliness, hopelessness, emptiness, and meaninglessness. Okay? Now I'm going to go back to, let's see, cognitive warfare. Let's see if I can find here. Okay? So, the reason why cognitive attacks go unnoticed by their target is that cognitive activities bypass the conscious mind and directly target the subconscious of a person. In fact, within the subconscious mind, the primary target is the amygdala. From an evolutionary point of view, the amygdala is the oldest part of the brain. Before we go into more detail on the ways in use and means used for cognitive activities, we will briefly look at the function of our subconscious and conscious mind, as well as the relationship between the two. As the term suggests, our subconscious mind exists beneath our conscious mind. Contrary to the conscious mind, the subconscious mind is always active, right? So when a person starts to feel negative about themselves, it starts within the subconscious mind. Okay? When you want to condition a person, you don't condition them through their conscious mind. You condition them through their subconscious mind. You create attacks that are psychological in nature or technological in nature, in which you can embed negative conditioning into the subconscious. Okay? And we know how you think in your subconscious directly affect your behavior in your conscious mind. This is why certain people can behave a certain way and not become conscious of it, or not be conscious of it. Okay? So, as the term suggests, our subconscious mind exists beneath our subconscious mind. Contrary to the conscious mind, the subconscious mind is always active. It never sleeps. Okay? So again, please read about cognitive warfare. Okay, let's see, where was I? I have a lot of tabs open. So I'm trying to, yeah, there we go. All right. So in contrast, depressive symptoms include depressed mood, guilt, loss of appetite, sleep disturbance, psychomotor retardation, social withdrawal, self reproaches, and the desire for self harm. Theoretically, depressive cognitions are posited to lead to depressive symptoms in adults because, as stated by Robbins 1993, negative thoughts can depress your mood. Now, what have you seen within, particularly in black women, is how they are easily bored. They seek out excitement. They seek out attention. All right. And social media plays a big part. Now, I'm sure some of you know about the psychological program ran by Facebook and Instagram, right? And they were using what is called emotional contagion. You know, we see how some people lose their Instagram account, particularly women, and how they have these mental breakdown over the loss of their social media account, particularly the Instagram account. So part of cognitive warfare is the use of social media to manipulate the emotions of the targeted audience. All right. And they do this by what is called cognitive warfare. All right. And emotional contagions. Now, there's also social contagion, which is used to manipulate young people into believing that they are transgender. All right. And there's a study by in Sweden, actually, of young Swedish boys and girls who spend a lot of time on social media, and how they are being influenced to identify as transgender. Okay, go and look that up. Again, these are things that I talk about that is real. It's not made up. Okay, we just, as black people, we have been manipulated, psychologically conditioned to not see these things, to ignore these things. Okay? So, according to Beck, 1967, negative cognition, views about the self, the world, and the future, once activated, dominates a person's thinking and lead to depressive symptomology. Okay? Propose that hopelessness, one of the depressive cognition, precedes the development of depressive symptomology, which is characterized by lack of energy, psychomotor retardation, lower self-esteem, and retarded initiations. Essentially, negative cognition makes one vulnerable to depressive symptoms, and proposed in the present study. So when you look at the condition of black men and black women and what the mind will do to protect the self is to create a delusional mindset or split a person's personality or engage in compartmentalizing certain things, events, to where it's locked away in the mind because those things are too harmful, it's traumatizing to the self. All right, so we have a lot to do in terms of understanding what has been done to us, the open trauma, fear-based conditioning, in which I talk about all the time, right? Police officers engaging in the killing of unarmed black men and black women. That is part of the fear-based trauma program, as well as police officers raiding the homes of single parent household run by women who have young adolescents and teenagers in the home. Right? It is to traumatize the mothers as well, and more importantly, traumatize the children. We have to see these things in the light and truth of what it is. And if we don't wake up as a people, we are just saying to the younger generations that we don't give a shit about y'all. And I refuse to do that. I mean, I may not be in the economic condition to do what needs to be done, but I'm a damn well speak on it. And hopefully people out there listening, hopefully we start to develop a consciousness of social responsibility for each other, of self-love and unity and unifying with each other. And don't let religion be our great divider. All right? I'll talk to you guys in the next video.